Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today's video is actually part of a video hop. I showed you the Heart Be Light sentiments, but I actually ended up using the Peace, Love, and Joy. And then the two kind of stars of the show are the Winter Watercolor and the Watercolor Pines. So yeah, look at, I got my own spray box, guys. So I recently told you guys in a video that I had picked up some sprays from Ranger. And so today I wanted to kind of give those a try. I'm still playing around with them, but they create a pretty little kind of snowy spatter background. And I used speckled egg, iced spruce, and then this super kind of fun one. It's brushed pewter, which is like a shiny metallic. And then I also, this is me just adding a little bit of water, trying to get a little bit of movement. And then I did also add the picket fence, which is just white. And then I've never had a spatter box before because I never really used sprays. I mean, just like every once in a while on occasion. So once those kind of dried down and I wasn't going to be moving the pigment around too much, I took them out of the box so that I could dry them completely. And then I set them aside so that I could do my stamping. So these stamps are drawn specifically to look like watercolor when you stamp them down. And I thought that this would be a really, really fun time to get out my distress pencils that I have owned but have never used. So I picked out a couple of Christmassy kind of colors and I'm going to use them to color directly onto my stamp. So I spritzed my stamp with water. I'm doing the trees first. I spritzed them with just a light coating of water, and then I went in, this is Rustic Wilderness, I believe, and I'm just kind of playing around here because I've never used them before, and here is what I found. You don't want to have too much water, because then your pigment is really light and really watered down, just like if you were watercoloring and you added more water, but you don't want to have too little water on there, or then you can't get any pigment off of the pencil. So just a light spray, and then try your pencil. Like here, I tried to go back in without spraying again, like because there was some moisture left on the stamp. It wasn't enough moisture. Like you almost have to go back in and spray it. And then if you want a more watercolory look, you can actually just spray it like very lightly a second time before you stamp. I really think these trees are super cute. I wanted to see if I could add just a little bit more color by taking my pencil direct to paper and just kind of adding in a little bit of shading where I wanted it. That did work. I would be very careful not to be too heavy-handed, especially because we're working on watercolor paper. It is textured. So when you're taking the pencil to the paper, if you don't stamp back over it like you see me doing here, like add more water, you will be able to see the texture and it won't look like a smooth watercolor. So then once I was happy with my trees, I'm going to move on to the florals and their greenery. For the florals, I added a little bit of yellow to the centers with fossilized amber, and then I colored pretty much the whole flower in with candied apple, and then went back in and added a little bit of darkness with some fired brick. The flowers, I think, were probably the most challenging for me just because there was a larger surface area. So you can even see over here on this like large one that I wasn't getting super good coverage. I probably needed to add a little bit more water. But like I said, you can totally play around with this. I would say these are some of the easiest cards that I have made in a really long time because there isn't really, like, as far as technique, there isn't really anything to them. You just spritz, color your stamps, stamp, and repeat as many times as necessary. I did, because I do like a bit of a bolder color, I did do this at least twice for all of the images, just to make sure that you were able to see the image and it was a good amount of color. But if you wanted a softer look, you absolutely could just do this once. And it could have very well been like the colors that I was using. I did the same thing that I did with the pines, with the flowers, I went in and added just a bit more kind of shading around. This is the fired brick towards the center of the flower. And then kind of added in some candy apple. I wanted them to be a bit bolder. I think this was a little bit less successful with the larger images. I think it's easier when you're only adding, like with the trees, I only added like a line of color here or there. But they were totally salvageable. I just needed to add some more water to blend out those lines. For the pine, I'm actually going to bring in some peacock feathers just so I could have more of like a blue-green. And so I'm using the peacock feathers as my base, and then I'm going to go in with the peeled paint and rustic wilderness and add that in on top. The pine's some of my favorite like stampings from these cards. I just think that they are super cute in their little watercolor. I also added walnut stain, that's what it was, to the kind of the center of the sprig. And again, like I said, I did each of these twice. So let's talk about the video hop. Honeybee is very generously giving away 2 $50 gift cards to commenters along the hop. All the information will be below, where to go for your next stop. Make sure you're leaving everybody some love, not just because you're a kind person, but also because that's how you're going to win gift cards. And then they will announce the winner on November 4th. So for the last little bit of greenery, I am using crushed olive as my base color. Again, we're just trying to make it a little bit more interesting, mixing up our greens. So I'm going in with crushed olive, and then again, I will shade those with some rustic wilderness and some peeled paint just to have some darker greens in there, and then I will stamp them down. The trees have trunks. So you can stamp them with their trunks or without. I think they look fine without, but I am going to just show you how to add in those little trunks. And then for the one that's in the center, that trunk actually is just at the bottom. So I will stamp it to show you, but then when I die cut it, I pretty much just cut it off. So if you're wondering where the trunk went, that's where it goes. But otherwise, this is pretty much the extent of the effort that we have to put in to like get these super pretty watercolor images. If you are a person who likes like picking a card and making multiples for the season, I would recommend these. If you like that kind of soft watercolory look, these come together super, super fast. So here I'm going in, I just wanted, like I said, to blend out that red just a little bit more. So I am going to do another layer of the red over top. There isn't a right or a wrong way. Like, you can just keep adding color until you're happy with the way that your stamping is coming out. And then for the pine, I also decided that I wanted to add in just a little bit of that peacock feathers, just to get a little bit more of a blue-green. But really, this is like the entirety of how I used them. Some of the other like members of the team used them with just regular inks, but I really wanted that watercolor look. So I thought this was a great option. If you don't have the pencils, you can totally use distress inks or distress oxides and just spritz them with water before you stamp them. And that will also give you a watercolor look. It's just going to be a little bit less controlled. Like, you won't be like with the flowers, like we did the yellow centers, like you won't be able to do that per se. It's much more challenging. I suppose you could maybe do it with a finger dauber and add your yellow ink, and then ink up the flower with another finger dauber in the red. But the pencils are just kind of fun and easy and give you a good amount of control. So I do have another idea with them, which I may use in the future. I'm sure I will, because, well, I paid for those. I paid for those. You guys know how I feel about it. So I just cleaned mine up with a baby wipe. The only ones that stained at all were the flowers because of the red. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't clean them right away, and so that very well could have been my issue and why they stained because it sat on there. Here's me going in with the trunks, and you can see on the stamp set, like they have them circled which ones go together. And so the one in the middle goes at the bottom. This one, I don't know if it goes at the top or at the bottom, but I liked it better at the top, so that's what I did. And then the one on the left, it's very clearly goes at the bottom. You can see how they fit into each other. And I just spritz them, use some walnut stain, and then I also did stamp some of the berries, and I used the same red combination that we used for the florals. And then just misted them one last time and stamped them down. And then I did these twice as well. I think that the little addition of the trunk is really cute and gives them, I don't know, it gives them a little bit more of a realistic look, but I don't think that they're necessary. I think the trees look fine without them as well. So here I've just gotten all my dies. I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. One thing of note, when I was taking my tape off, I did notice that it did pull up some of the pigment. Not that it was noticeable on the stamped image, but it did make it so that my tape was not reusable. Just FYI on that. So here, I've just very loosely cut a like a little hill of snow, and I am going to do some stamping on my background as well. So I'll have the die cut trees in the forefront, and then I wanted to have some watercolor trees stamped in the background just to kind of fill out my scene. I'm going to do these the same way. So we have two different looks with these cards, even though we have the same, almost the same exact background, which you guys know, I totally love being able to stretch my supplies, get more bang for my buck, all of that jazz. And so I think that this is a fun way to do this. If you were doing multiples, like you were making a bunch of Christmas cards and this was your theme, I probably would do all, like, whatever it is, like, let's say we're going to do the trees. I would stamp all of the trees, die cut all of the trees at one time, and then I would stamp all of my backgrounds all at one time. I am a big fan when I'm making multiples of, like, batching and just getting that step out of the way. So that way you're, like, whenever you're done with that step, you're completely done with it. So again, these trees stamped really cute. I went back in and added just a little bit more shading. This is Rustic Wilderness, to, just kind of any shadow areas that I would like. And then for the florals, I've kind of just laid out my arrangement here, just an idea so that I would know where to stamp my stuff in the background. And so I'm stamping 2 more sprigs of pine and 1 more of the light green, kind of like greenery branches. And I'm just holding these in place while I move everything around. The pine I was able to do together, and then I did have to go back in and stamp the yellow greenery. So yeah, I think that they turned out really, really cute. Like the stamping, you can still see it even though we're stamping it on like the splatter background. And it just adds another layer of interest, whether that's to the floral arrangement or to the like little forest that we're building up. Either or, I think having a stamping in the background and then the die cut stamping on top of it, I think just kind of adds another layer of interest. Not that there's not enough going on here. These are very different cards for me, but as, again, we've recently talked about, I'm trying to try different things and branch out, and I think that that's good for everybody creatively. And so while trying something new may not give you the best card that you ever made, and it might give you the best card that you ever made, but it might not, but it will teach you something. And that's how we continue to grow. So here I'm just going in and freehanding just a little snow hill. This was the leftover from my watercolor paper from die cutting. And then here I have these, this is one of the new paper pads. It's the polka dots and stripes for the holidays. And I went through, looked at the colors because I didn't have a green that kind of matched what I had going on in the background. And so this cute little pinstripe did match. And so I chose to use that as my matte. Because it's tone on tone, I don't think it really takes away from the card. I think it just adds to it. And then this is just a leftover piece of cardstock I had from a different project. But I am going to be stamping my piece, my Noel, and then the Wishing You This Christmas on here. I chose to stamp them in silver, but so oftentimes I find that silver embossing powder is kind of hard to read and it's really hard to photograph. So I ended up using platinum embossing powder to heat set this because I just think it's much more legible, and it's super pretty. It's like a really good neutral. So I just sprinkled that on. You'll notice that quite a bit of it is sticking to the top. That's okay. It was just sticky from die cutting, like the tape that I had from my die cutting. But since we're going to be die cutting these out using their coordinating dies, it doesn't even matter. You won't even be able to see that. So it is Halloween, even though we are doing Christmas. Today is Halloween. And I told you guys when we talked earlier in the week that I knew it was going to be cold. When I went out this morning to take the jelly bean where she needed to go, it was 33 degrees. It's not going to get much warmer, PPS. It's just not. So originally we were supposed to be Minnie Mouse. That's what we were going as, but Minnie Mouse is not a very warm costume, and she does have a leftover costume from last year that we didn't use except for one Halloween party, which is a butterfly, and the butterfly has it's super warm and it has a hood and all of that. So I think we might be switching it up, and little Miss Jellybean might be going as a butterfly because it's going to be cold. So after I bought all the kids' Halloween costumes and everything else, I then had to go back and buy us gloves and mittens to make sure everybody had something that fit because it is going to be chilly. So I've glued my little hill down, and now I'm going to glue my background to my pattern paper. This is going to be my mat for this card. And then once that is in place, I'll be able to add my trees. I chose to add 2 trees flat and then 1 tree popped up. Again, just an additional layer, adding more interest. But you certainly could do them all flat and it would just be perfectly fine. So we have Halloween tonight. I do have Peanut's Halloween party for school as well. So I have to bring his costume with me so that he can dress up for his Halloween party. And I didn't ask anybody, I should have asked somebody in the PTO, am I supposed to dress up? It's a Halloween party. Am I supposed to dress up? Because I don't know the answer to that. So we'll have to, I guess, play it by ear and we'll see how much time I have once we get closer to. So here I really liked the Noel at the top, but it needed to have more weight. So I just cut a few additional dies so that I could just line them up and stack them together. I think ultimately I ended up stacking 4, including the top embossed piece. And this just gives it a super nice weight since it's the only sentiment and it's sitting directly at the top of our little forest. So I just put that down, and then we will go back and accent that little sentiment with some pearls later on. So for the next, I forgot about the shadow. Sorry, I forgot about the shadow. So I'm using a little bit of speckled egg, and I did add in some more of that brushed pewter just for a little shimmery effect. And then I'm just going to put in some clean water with my paintbrush underneath the trees. And then I'll go back in and just kind of drop in that color just to give them a little bit of a shadow on the snowy hill. If I was making multiples, I probably would have skipped this step because it's not necessary. It's still a pretty card without it. But since I'm not making multiples and this is the only one, and I probably will use this for one of my brother-in-laws for Christmas, I wanted to just go ahead and finish it out. So you can just drop that in until you're happy with the way it looks, set it aside to dry while we put together this next card. And this is the same thing. So like I said, we're using basically the same background, but 2 completely different ways. And I really like that, though. That's like super versatile. I'm a fan of anything that I can use different ways. So once I have this glued down, I am going to lay out how I want my flowers to be, and then I'll remove the top portion and then just go in and add some glue to the greenery to kind of pin them in place. Again, we have kind of like multiple layers here going on. The flat stamped greenery in the background, and then these little die cut portions. And then for the smaller flower, I will adhere that flat as well as the berries. And then for the larger flower, I will be popping that one up as well. So yeah, so I have his party today. I also have to figure out something to put in the crock pot so we can actually eat before we go trick-or-treating. I don't know. I was talking to a friend recently, and she said that her husband said where he grew up, they would just trick-or-treat on the weekends. Like, they moved the date. And I was like, no, we've never done that. Like, in fact, Peanut asked me the other day, he's like, well, what if it's raining? When do we trick or treat? And I'm like, no, bro, you live in Ohio. Like, rain, sun, sleet, hail, snow, you trick or treat on Halloween. You just suck it up, buddy. I remember one where we were in literal snowsuits. I don't even know what anybody's costume was. And my mom was following us in the car with hot chocolate. And like in between in between houses, we would get in the car and have some hot chocolate and then get back out and like trudge through the through the snow to get our candy. Like, I don't know. It builds character. He's going to be fine. At least it's dry. Like, it's cold, but at least it's not like raining. Though they are calling for snow, I think the snow isn't coming until after trick-or-treating is over. So we'll see whether or not it actually shows up. But yeah, this is where we live, so you get what you get. But yeah, he said, my friend's husband said that they actually moved it to the weekend, and I've never heard of such a thing. So I would be interested to know if where you live, do you trick or treat on the day, or do you guys move it? Do you move it to the weekend? So here the piece spans almost the entirety of that floral. So I didn't have to add any foam tape to it. But for the other ones, the little sub-sentiments, I did have to add just a little sliver of foam tape on either side, and then I just used adhesive for the part that sat on the floral. This is is it metallic mix? I think it's the metallic. I'll link it below. I will. This is one of the new ones that Honeybee released, and it's probably hands down one of my favorites. So I chose the kind of soft brushed silver, and I am using those to accent the sentiment. Originally, you can see on the flower card, I put them on the flower, but I didn't love it, so I did end up going back and just picking them up with my tweezers and moving them to the background, and I liked that much, much better. And then I think that is it. I think that's both cards. Oh, here I'm fighting with this gemstone. But yeah, that's both cards in their entirety. I hope that this inspires you to try a little watercolor stamping. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.